Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for tuning into one of our talks today. I'm so thrilled today to be joined by Molly Bernard to talk about her latest movie, Milkwater. And I love the way that you describe how, when you first read the script, you actually had a lot of apprehension about this character because there are so many layers and complexities to her. But for you, how is that always a really good sign when you have that sort of feeling when you read a script? Because I imagine that it really places you in a position where you know that this is going to push you outside of your comfort zone and give you something new to play around with.
Great question. I like coming in immediately with a heavy hitter. I'm really drawn to like impossible projects, and I feel like it's a great privilege to play a part that kind of freaks you out. And when I read the script, I felt like Milo. I don't know. She's flailing. She's lost, and I really identified with a lot of that. I spent all of my 20s pretty messy, pretty unhappy, just flailing. And when I took on Milkwater, I had like been out of that for a minute, for about a year. I was just kind of coming into my own, and I just was like, I love her, and I think I will be able to play her with empathy. And because in the script you're really frustrated with her, and in watching the movie too, you're like, oh, what are you doing? But then at a certain point the script is pretty wily. You love her, and I was like, I can do that. I was like, I think I did that to my friends for a lot of my 20s, so I can do it. I can act it in a movie. But yeah, I don't know. It's rare when you find a script that makes you go like, okay, this is really cool, and like, I hope I can do this.
And to the point where you also ended up coming on board the project as an executive producer, and it's your first time stepping into that role. So, what was the journey of coming on board in that capacity as well?
I mean, it's the first. It's a lot of firsts for me. It's my first time leading a project, and when I saw the edit of Milkwater, I just loved it, and I called our producer and our director, and I was like, I love this film. I want to do whatever it takes to make sure it has like a life. I'm going to get behind it as hard as I can. And that meant recently, like I hired my friend Alex Citron. She made the poster, and that meant many Zoom conferences, phone conferences, email chains, text chains of us sending detailed notes and coming up with the perfect poster, many drafts, and that's it's really amazing to have creative control. I'm glad that I didn't step into that position until after filming, because I think I had enough going on in my head, and as an actor it's like I got so much is going on up here, so it was nice to focus just on the performance aspect of it. But in the future I'd be very interested to see how it is to produce something that you're actively in, and what if that changes, if anything changes, and what does it change.
And in the story of this character, she basically becomes a surrogate for an older gay man that she becomes friends with. And I thought it was really interesting in the fact that there's no point where she questions whether that was the right decision for her to make. It's not a story about, should I have said yes to this? Should I not have? She's very, very full hearted in knowing that that was the journey and the path that her life was going to take her on. And was that something for all of you involved in the project that was really important to keep at the crux of her story?
It was definitely important for Morgan and Gari, who was my handholder and soul sister for all of that. She wrote and directed the film, and I loved it. I loved it on set when I was like, oh, why is she so stubborn? And I would try to like soften moments of Milo's insanity. Not insanity, that's not fair, but I would try to soften moments of Milo's like behavior. The choices that she was making, I would try to like blur and just make less intense. And Morgan would be like, no, it is that intense. This is the movie. It is her boldly going forward and really not having any sense of how her behavior and actions are affecting others. And I did, she was kind of reminding me of that a lot, to the point where towards the end of the shoot, I didn't need the reminder. I was just like in that place.
I also really appreciate the fact that part of her backstory is in having lost her parents, and one of them at a very young age as well. But again, rather than her being a character who festers on that and really lets that be her identity, it really just channels into that idea of family that you create for yourself, and that very unique dynamic that can come into friendships, particularly in your 20s. And so, how did that really foster into a lot of the friendships that you created on screen and the types of connections that she had with people with that in mind?
That bit of the film is one of my favorite aspects. I, again, can just really relate to it. My family is my chosen family, and my friends have had to parent me. I have, made ungraceful, bad decisions that my friends have had to basically like nurse me through. And I am that way for them too. So I feel like Milo, in one articulation of it, is like, yes, she's an orphan, but she's not. She has this community of loves that they all care for each other. So I really loved that part of the movie, and it was natural and easy. The film was cast so well that there was just, and we had to shoot it very quick. We shot it in 21 days. So there was just such a love for each other and a love for the project that it just kind of happened. Alchemy is something, it's very elusive. And if it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's not. And we got lucky. It was there.
And in working with Patrick Breen, who plays Roger, who's the person that your character is becoming a surrogate for in the film, when they first meet at the beginning, it's not a romantic relationship, but it almost has to have that similar sensibility of there being a chemistry and a spark for them both to enter into this with each other without knowing each other very well. And so how did the two of you really work to construct what that initial spark of energy and connection between the two of them was going to be?
Yeah, we had about a week of rehearsal before we started shooting. And I think Patrick and I had like 4 days together. And we read through every scene with Morgan and talked it through and discussed, the arc of each scene, the beats of each scene, the problems. And he is just so lovely. And the thing I love so much about Milkwater, the script, and then also how it plays in the film, is there are moments where you're not sure, like, will this suddenly turn into romance? Is Milo in love with Roger? What is going to happen? What they're doing is so intimate. And if Milo had her druthers, I think she'd want it to be even more intimate, So there's just, she's boundaryless and he's really not. So it's that storytelling is so sophisticated, I think. And to have had like, our fearless leader, she was just so specific about what she wanted on set. And she really helped us navigate the nuances of that delicate line. Because it's tricky. It's I can't imagine being someone's surrogate. I don't know that I could do it. I think, and if I did it, I think I would want to be very involved. Like, I might be a Milo. I could be like, what are you doing? You want to hang out tonight? It's like, no, we have a legal contract. Well, but we can still hang out, right?
There's also really beautiful intimacy in a lot of the small moments with the two of them. And, when they're first doing the insemination, there's that moment where you're laying on his lap and he's stroking your hair. And then that repeats a couple of other times as an action of connectivity between the two of them. And were those moments really coming from the pages of the script, or were they things that you all really found in the moment in that rehearsal or when you were on set with each other?
Those were scripted. And it's very intentional. The hair moment with Roger, then the hair moment with Ade, and then the hair moment with Roger. Like there is this with Cameron, sorry, the boyfriend. There are those 3 moments of intention, and it's telling a story about Milo's intimacy issues. And it's also, I think, telling the story of parental stuff, and I think she desperately wants to be saved, maybe from herself. And I appreciated that it was scripted, because it's like, I imagine, as I was reading it, I was like, okay, I can imagine what this will look like. But then the doing of it, was like very specific, like how I responded to each of their touch, and like, it's not necessarily scripted that like I wince away. It's probably, I think it's written like Milo dislikes it. And so scripts are great. The thing about film is that it's a roadmap, right? It's a map of what the visual aspect looks like. And then, an actor's responsibility is to embody the physical shape that the writer is describing for you on the page. And that's where all the freedom comes from. A great script is actually written really tight. And if you follow the rules of that script, you then are on the ride of that character's adventure. And yes, I had to work hard, but I trusted Morgan's script and I gave over to it. And it really allowed all of the beats that she wrote to just like pour out.
One of the other moments that really stands out in the film is the moment where Milo tells Roger that she is pregnant, because it's done in a way where they're the only 2 people in a room full of people that know that this is what's happening, know that's the conversation, and are having that emotional experience. Everybody else is just a bystander at Roger's drag show. And so I just wanted to ask about the journey of finding the really quiet nuances within that scene and that particular moment in your performance.
Well, I love that scene doesn't have any words. That's kind of my favorite thing about it. The nuance of that was kind of, I really wanted it to be very tender, and for it to be just a moment of joy. And yeah, in that, it's when you watch it, you see that they're in a full drag bar, but it really does, like the way that my mind has cataloged that scene is like, it is just the 2 of them in a very small, sweet moment, even despite the fact that they're literally at a party. It felt like,
sorry.
No, it felt like that when we did it. That's funny, the way that it felt. And then watching it, I was like, that's great. That was it. That was like what we did that day. It matches. Cause sometimes you feel like you're going through something the day that you film something, and then you end up seeing it and you're like, not what I thought was happening. But that, in that case, it was captured.
On a separate note, I wanted to ask you about some of your work on Younger, because what you've done with that character throughout these seasons is really phenomenal, especially when you look at this character who has this unabashed level of confidence that could almost err into the side of being slightly off-putting. But you built her in such a way where every single thing that she does is from such a place of love and affection for people around her. And she's the first person to walk into a room and lift somebody else up. And I think that that's a really delicate balance to strike as a performer to achieve that. And so I just wanted to ask you about that journey at the beginning of the show of really trying to figure out what that balance was going to be with that extremity of her personality, but in finding, the small characteristics that would really make that work in the way that it has and connected with people.
That's so great that you see that. That's my favorite thing about Lauren. And it's something that like I know is going on. I never know if other people know it. So it's so nice to hear you articulate it like that. I'm like, oh, good job, Molly. Good. You're doing, it's showing. I think it all started with Darren Star when I had my first callback for Lauren. I was doing that first scene with Hillary and Sutton, and I'm talking about Sutton's bush. It's in the pilot. And I remember in the audition, I like kind of went about it with judgment. I was like, oh, your bush. And Darren was like, no, 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 this character sees it with wonder. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So that kind of set the tone for me. Like Lauren's rule is that where I would judge or be a little critical or question it, Lauren is exploring it with like wonder. And I just pushed it farther as the 7 seasons went on. I was like, oh, it's wonder, but it's also celebration. And so she's, I think why it works with her is that she unconditionally loves herself. She does not doubt herself. She has such confidence. She's thriving. And you rarely see characters like that on TV. And she's queer, but her sexuality isn't tokenized on the show. So it's just like she is who she is, and she wants that for other people too. So she's there to like champion and amplify and help other people like take off, like lift off. And that her fundamental kind of herness, I think she's a celebrator of herself and others. So that's like her main MO.
It's also been really wonderful to watch your performance in emulating small aspects of Miriam Shore's character this season. And whether it's the physical element of wearing a larger necklace or just some of those small personality traits. And I was really interested in the way that you looked at Miriam's performance throughout the entire show and your time working with her, and really thought about the small beats that you wanted to pull into Lauren, but in doing it in a way that still feels very authentically her at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of had to do this a number of years ago when I played young Shelley, the younger version of Judith Light on Transparent. The trick is kind of not to copycat or mimic. I think it was just, and with Miriam, I was like, I've worked with her for so long and I love her that I can embody her essence, not her herness, not her mannerisms, nothing like that, but her essence. And that's kind of how I went about that. And I think there on the days that Lauren was in full like baby diva mode, like Diana mode, I kind of was in the headspace of like, this is an homage to Miriam. And homages are great because you respect, an homage is paying respects. So I was like, yeah, this is great. This is it.
And then jumping back to a little earlier in your career as an actor, I wanted to ask you about the time in which Anne Bogart, who's a theater director and kind of early mentor to you, really made a pivotal evolution for you in encouraging you not to wait to go to graduate school, but to really go straight forward, and not just as something for yourself, but as something because she saw the potential for you to pass along your knowledge and your skills and your mentorship in the future in the industry to other people. And so beyond that being really pivotal to you at the moment that she did that, how has that continued to evolve the way that you make your way through the industry, and in particular in collaborating with other people or looking at the people coming through a door right behind you?
It's a great question. Anne Bogart is someone so, so special to me. She really changed my life. She just like grabbed me by my scruff and just like, put me right under her wing. And that has so much power to a young person. I feel like she fundamentally taught me how to collaborate. She taught me the phrase collaboration is agreeing to disagree. But you do it with respect. And, it's making art is really personal and everyone has an opinion about it. And when you make art, it gets heated fast. And yet Anne only does group projects. She never like solo directs anything. Everyone is directing that project with her. And it is a great thing to witness. I've assisted directed for her. She's directed me in plays. She's taught me for years. So she's just like my mentor. And, I carry that in my work. Sometimes my nerves get in the way, like my actor nerves get in the way. But as soon as I can step away from like whatever pressure I think I'm under, which is usually like, fictional and insecurities, I'm able to, it's just so important when you're on set to see outside of yourself. And I always try, and Hillary does this too. It's important to welcome someone new. on set. And I love when we have someone, whether it's on Younger or Chicago Med, when there's someone and it's their first day on a TV set, it's their first gig. I love championing that person, and like making everyone applaud for them when they leave. And it's just a good mindset to be in, right? That I remember my first few gigs especially out of grad school. I was like so freaked out and so nervous. And the little bit of kindness that people show you in those early days, you will never forget. Like, you carry that with you for the rest of your life. And that just greatly impacts your confidence. So it's a gift that is like, that should be given away. I think a lot of people are very generous in Hollywood, and I want everyone to be even more generous. Like, we have to celebrate each other.
I also really appreciate and remember a few years ago you talking about imposter syndrome, and that was something that you have faced in the industry, but also in talking about overcoming it, that some of that is realizing that it is something that is going on all around us. And I think particularly within creative fields, you're constantly stepping into new projects, you're constantly working with new teams where you're having to get to know new people, and make a million choices every single day that are going to affect the overall outcome of something. And so what has that evolution and journey with facing imposter syndrome and really figuring out your personal way of overcoming it been over the last few years?
It's a little like being in a relationship. You have to wake up every day and choose to stay in that relationship or not. And so there are days that I'm like completely, I mean, it's rare, but there are days where I'm completely overcome by imposter syndrome. And also there are moments on set, like, a day on set is a long day, 12 to 18 hours, right? So there are many feelings that one experiences on a typical day while at work. So one moment of a scene, I can totally feel like good about, and the next moment it eludes me and I immediately feel shame and imposter syndrome. And then I'm like, okay, hold on a second. Just ask the director a question, like ask for clarification. Or I rarely do this, very rarely will I say, can I go again? Can I have like another take? I know that I didn't nail it. And if I put a little bit of that pressure on myself, sometimes that helps. Other days, I know that I'm not gonna nail it. And so I try to accept it. Like, okay, it's one day at work. You didn't nail that scene. That's okay. There's editors, and it will be okay. Like, it will be okay because it has to be okay. And it's not about you. It's not about your coverage. I can show up, I can listen, I can do my best. I can show up prepared so that I'm ready to do my best that I can do that day. And that is the main thing that helps me combat imposter syndrome, right? Like, Molly, do the best you can do today. That's it. And you got to go moment by moment. And I have a little coping strategies. I can Headspace, that app is a great friend. If I ever need an instant reset, they have like a great 2-minute, 3-minute meditation that I just pop my headphones in and sit like literally in my cast chair and just like taking in oxygen and releasing it, because it's my actor brain sometimes can get in my way. I know it can. Other times it's a great tool to have, but when it turns on you, it's like I have had to work for years to have quickie little fixes to get out of there.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that, and congratulations on everything with Milkwater. It's a really, really beautiful and intimate and lovely film. So congratulations, and thank you so much, Molly.
Thank you. Thank you for watching. It means so much. I love this film, and thank you for having me. You ask gorgeous questions. I was like, this is hard.